One of the most helpless feelings is witnessing someone you care about spiral out of control. I specifically wrote this podcast with the hope that it might help anyone who is enduring such a battle. I am all too familiar with where the depths of anxiety can take a person, but watching my own child be brought to her knees at the age of 15 was gut-wrenching. On August 10th, my daughter Kelsey attended her first day of high school, and it was anything but smooth. It had been 2 years since she had last attended a bricks-and-mortar school due to safety and security concerns at our local middle school. Kelsey completed her 7th and 8th grade years at home by taking advantage of Florida's virtual learning program. When Kelsey was accepted into our local collegiate high school, her dad and I were elated. She would be attending 9th grade with just 49 other freshmen. This was the perfect opportunity for Kelsey to re-engage into the traditional school setting without the stress of a big school environment. Little did we know, she would still be entirely overwhelmed and hit rock bottom within the first few days of the new school year. Kelsey is a high-anxiety individual, so I tried my best to help prepare her for the first day of school throughout the latter part of the summer. I reminded her that everything was going to be new, so it would be common for anyone to feel nervous and somewhat intimidated. We both attended the school's orientation meeting, which allowed Kelsey to get a better feel for the school's layout and staff. Thankfully, everyone was so welcoming and appeared to genuinely care about the students and the success of their education. 2 weeks before school began, Kelsey started counting down the days. By the time the first day arrived, she was so nervous that she could not eat breakfast. Unfortunately, she was not able to eat lunch either. That night, she picked at the food on her dinner plate and refused to eat anything of substance. By bedtime, I was able to get her to drink a little ginger ale, but ultimately she fell asleep on an empty stomach. Around 2 a.m., Kelsey woke up and stumbled into my bedroom requesting to sleep on my couch. Although I understood her need to be near someone of comfort, I knew she would rest better in her own bed, so I followed her back to her room and agreed to sleep next to her. Sadly, the second day of school was a repeat of the first. She could not bear to eat breakfast, so I begged her to at least drink some ginger ale. She was only able to consume 4 ounces of the liquid by the time we arrived at school. Her lunch bag came home full of the food that I had packed that morning. Everything had been untouched. That evening, she attempted to drink some more ginger ale, but it was a slow and painful process. Kelsey gave it her best effort to complete the day's homework assignments, but she was unfocused due to being overwhelmed and hungry. She had officially starved her brain. To soothe her upset stomach, I gave her a dose of Pepto-Bismol, and by bedtime she was able to choke down a slice of peanut butter toast. It seemed like a monumental victory at that moment in time. I once again crawled into her bed to provide her with the comfort and support she was hoping for. In the dark of the night, Kelsey desperately stated that she felt it would be easier if she fell asleep and never again woke up. The pain she was feeling was so intense that death seemed like the only avenue to peace. Together, we prayed for strength and healing. On day 3, Kelsey woke up vomiting. She was literally sick with anxiety. I encouraged her to eat, hoping that food would settle her stomach. The breakfast menu consisted of a room temperature Coca-Cola and some peanut butter toast. Being a trooper, she gave it her best effort, but what she consumed only stayed down for a few minutes. It was obvious that she was in serious trouble. Kelsey is 5 foot 2 inches, small-framed, and at the time, a whopping 93 pounds. She did not have an ounce of fat to lose, so not eating a substantial meal for 4 straight days had created an incredibly dangerous situation. Little did I know, she had barely eaten for 2 consecutive weeks. I felt helpless, but knew I had to make some immediate decisions. Kelsey was adamant that she was going to still go to school that day, as it was more stressful for her to miss classes than to attend. So I made a deal with her. First, I would contact her counselor and pull her out of the AP psychology class, which was an elective course. This would help reduce her overall workload. Next, I would pick her up at lunchtime and take her to her favorite restaurant. My goal was to get her to eat and for her to keep it down. But if that proved unsuccessful, I would have no choice but to take her to the hospital. Plan B would be to temporarily medicate her. I dreaded this thought, as I was concerned the medication would numb her pain, providing a false sense of well-being. My biggest fear was that my daughter would become dependent on a drug to make her feel better. Medication certainly has its place, but it only masks the issue at hand. The only way Kelsey was going to find freedom from anxiety controlling her was to defeat it, not medicate it. Thankfully, Plan A worked. Removing Kelsey from the psychology class brought added relief to an overwhelming homework schedule. During our lunch outing, Kelsey consumed a third of her meal and was able to digest it. That night, she slept fairly well as I lay next to her providing support. By morning, I could tell she was beginning to stabilize, but we still had a long way to go. My husband was dumbfounded as to how going to school could create such debilitating anxiety. His perspective was precisely why he could not be of any comfort. Having been in Kelsey's shoes, I could relate, and luckily, I had recently learned how to free myself from anxiety's death grip. When someone is spiraling out of control, the first step is to stop the spinning. In Kelsey's case, she had been worrying about the new school year for several weeks in advance. She was consumed by intrusive thoughts that led her to lose sleep and not eat. This combination eventually put her into a tailspin, of which she could not pull out of on her own. To stop the spiral, I first focused on the basic needs, eating and sleeping. I explained the process to Kelsey so that she would understand the reasoning behind the steps I was asking her to take. I purchased some over-the-counter sleep and stress vitamins that thankfully Kelsey was willing to try. Meals and snacks were small and frequent until she was back on track. Within a few days, we were ready to start stabilizing her mental state. Understandably, Kelsey's desire was to run away from the pain. I could tell by her demeanor that she wanted to abandon the bricks-and-mortar school and return to the virtual world. So I had to break the news that virtual school was no longer an option. I explained that the collegiate high school would provide real-world experiences and a more balanced learning environment. After all, school is more than academics. It is also about acquiring skills to successfully navigate life, such as overcoming challenges and obstacles, managing stress, building healthy relationships, perfecting time management, and practicing kindness, respect, and tolerance. The virtual school was academically proficient, but it led to isolation and a lack of exposure to the real world. We could not have asked for a better transition from virtual to in-person instruction. The high school campus was compact and non-chaotic. It offered small class sizes, an intimate staff, and advanced academics. In addition, the combined lunch and tutorial period was an hour long, where students could relax and converse in the beautiful outdoor courtyard. Yet during the summer, Kelsey had unknowingly allowed anxiety to control her thought process. By the time she was through her first day of freshman year, she was already panicking about the foreseeable workload. Although dropping the AP psychology class eased the burden, her anxiety issues were far from over. Kelsey worried that she would still have too much homework, which would wipe out her free time. She became accustomed to the virtual world, where she could be in class and at the same time complete assignments. So wrapping her head around attending high school from 7:30 a.m. until 2:30 p.m. and then coming home and spending time on homework was nerve-wracking. In her mind, this suffocating schedule would greatly diminish her precious free time. Once she came around to accepting that reality, Kelsey began to worry that she would look foolish if she answered questions incorrectly. I explained that no one is perfect. If someone thought she were a fool, so be it. We have very little control over the opinions of others. Moving on, Kelsey worried that her teachers would not like her. I encouraged Kelsey to just focus on putting her best foot forward. I was confident that her teachers would enjoy having my daughter in class because she is a respectful and conscientious person. Eventually, we were able to suppress Kelsey's greatest fears, and she started running out of things to be anxious about. For months, she had trained her brain to excessively worry. Therefore, when one concern was resolved, she would replace it with another. Eventually, she was worrying just to worry, and that is when I knew it was time to give the tough love speech. I had to help break the vicious cycle. I said, "Kelsey, you must stop allowing intrusive thoughts to take control of your mindset." I explained how irrational anxiety could be and how easily our thoughts could put us into a death spiral. Together, we began working on the 6 steps and 10 habits that I outline in my anxiety series podcasts titled Free Your Mind Part 1 and Free Your Mind Part 2. To this day, when anxiety starts to rear its ugly head, both Kelsey and I make sure we are following the steps and applying the habits to maintain a healthy mindset. As I explained to Kelsey, the goal is to find effective techniques that tackle anxiety as soon as anxiety surfaces so that it does not take hold, take control, or consume us. In addition, I challenge Kelsey to implement the following suggestions to overcome the stress of homework completion. Number 1, make a to-do list and then check off tasks as they are completed. This can provide a sense of organization and productivity. Number 2, focus on accomplishing one item at a time. Allow yourself to feel good about the task you have finished. Number 3, create a time frame to work on specific assignments and then stick to that schedule. This will help manage your time and keep your focus. Number 4, take small breaks between tasks and time frames to refresh and recharge. Number 5, if you cannot find a solution to a problem, give yourself permission to leave it alone and revisit the problem at a later time. Quite often, a solution surfaces when you take a step back. And number 6, allow yourself to take a time out when you feel overwhelmed so that you can gain perspective. Remember to breathe deeply and concentrate only on what is within your control. Once Kelsey completely stabilized, I advised her to always remain vigilant. Anxiety attacks can happen at a moment's notice and strike with a vengeance. We discussed how those middle-of-the-night worries are a total waste of time and only rob us of our sleep. I also reminded Kelsey that she has access to an internal power that is stronger than any other force. Anxiety is a weakness for both of us, but we do not have to be a slave to it. Spiritually speaking, Kelsey and I are Christ followers, and therefore have the ultimate power to overcome Satan's attacks and win every battle. For those of us who struggle, it is crucial to acknowledge the onset of anxious thoughts before they get a mental stronghold. As for Kelsey, she is now confident that she has the power and the skills to overcome anxiety and realizes that she must guard herself from spiraling out of control. I forewarned her that it is not uncommon to have setbacks, and that is okay. However, if she were to stumble, fall, or drop to her knees, she must get right back up, dust herself off, and keep moving forward. I am happy to continue being a strong support system for my daughter. but she must not be dependent on me. I, nor anyone else, can be with Kelsey 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. She must find her inner strength and choose to maintain her mental stability. I am hopeful that my Anxiety Series podcasts have provided Kelsey and all my listeners with insightful techniques and helpful suggestions that will ultimately defeat anxiety. We are all together in this battle, but don't allow a mental issue to control you. Reach out to someone you trust. Feel free to utilize my podcasts as a helpful tool. And above all, seek God's strength and guidance. Thanks for listening.